She was only 18, yet the world already seemed to rest on her fragile shoulders. Aisha Malik, daughter of one of Lahore's wealthiest businessmen, stood at the edge of a decision that would shape her life forever. Beautiful, proud, and carrying herself with the air of someone who had always been told she deserved the very best, Aisha had never known what it meant to truly struggle. And yet, in front of her now stood Hamza, a young man of 20, poor but determined, whose eyes carried a sincerity money could never buy. He was asking for her trust. For her love. For her future. Her heart raced. Should she follow her emotions, risking family disgrace and the wrath of her father, or should she bury her feelings beneath the weight of luxury, choosing status over sincerity? Would she be brave enough to defy her world? Or would she turn her back on the only man who loved her for who she truly was? And if she did, would she live to regret it? The story begins. The sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of Malik Mansion, dancing across the marble floor like ripples of gold. Outside, the lush gardens were alive with the chirping of sparrows, the fragrance of roses drifting in the morning air. Inside, however, the atmosphere was heavy, suffocating, like a storm waiting to break. Servants moved quietly in the background, careful not to disturb the rising tension. The Malik household was one of power, wealth, and discipline. And in the center of it all sat Mr. Aslam Malik, Aisha's father, his sharp eyes hidden behind thin-rimmed glasses as he read the newspaper. He was a man feared more than loved, respected more than admired. Every decision in this household passed through him, and his word was final. Aisha entered the grand hall, her footsteps echoing against the marble. Dressed in a soft pastel dress, she looked delicate, almost fragile, but her eyes betrayed her restlessness. She had been unable to sleep the night before. Hamza's words still rang in her ears. "I don't have riches, Aisha. I don't have palaces or servants. But I have a heart that beats only for you. Will you trust me?" She remembered the way his hand had trembled as he held hers, the quiet desperation in his voice. Hamza was poor, the son of a schoolteacher, living in a modest home with peeling paint and creaking doors. Yet his presence had always made her feel safe in a way her mansion never could. But love in her world was not a choice, it was a transaction. The garden encounter. Later that day, Aisha slipped out to the garden where Hamza waited. His shirt was worn, his shoes scuffed, but his eyes lit up the moment he saw her. "Aisha," he whispered, his voice carrying both hope and fear. She looked around nervously, afraid the servants might see. "Hamza, you shouldn't have come here. If my father finds out." "Let him find out," Hamza interrupted, stepping closer. "I'm not ashamed of who I am. I may not have wealth, but I have dreams, and I want you to be part of them." Her heart softened, but fear pulled her back. "You don't understand. My father already has plans. He wants me to marry Zion, the son of his business partner." Hamza's face fell. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he said nothing. Then his voice, low and steady, cut through the silence. "And what do you want, Aisha?" Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She wanted him. She wanted freedom. She wanted love. But the invisible chains of her upbringing clinked louder than her desires. The father's warning. That evening, during dinner, Mr. Malik finally spoke. His voice was calm, but the edge was sharper than steel. "Aisha, tomorrow Zion's family will visit. It's time you behaved like the daughter of the Malik family. No more childish distractions." Her spoon clattered against the plate. "But Abba, Enough!" His fist struck the table. "Do you want to shame me? Do you want the world to laugh at me, saying Aslam Malik's daughter ran away with a nobody? You will marry Zion, and that is final." Tears stung her eyes, but she quickly lowered her gaze. Her mother, sitting quietly, gave her a look full of sympathy but remained silent. Even she had no power in this house. The heartbreak. That night, Aisha met Hamza one last time near the old gate at the edge of her father's estate. The moonlight cast shadows across his face, making him look older, wearier. "So this is it?" Hamza asked quietly. Her voice cracked. "Hamza, I can't fight them. I'm not strong enough. He took a step back, pain flashing in his eyes. I never thought money could come between us, Aisha. I thought our love was stronger. Please understand, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I do love you, but I can't ruin my family. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then Hamza nodded slowly, his expression hardening. One day, Aisha, one day you'll realize what you've lost. And when that day comes, I won't be the same man standing here. And with that, he turned and walked into the darkness, leaving her trembling by the gate, her sobs echoing into the night. The engagement. Days later, Malik Mansion glittered with lights and music. Guests arrived in expensive cars, laughter and chatter filling the air. Aisha, dressed in a dazzling engagement gown, sat like a statue beside Zion. He was handsome, confident, but his smile carried no warmth, only pride, as though she were another trophy in his father's collection. People congratulated her, praised her beauty, envied her luck. But inside, her heart was breaking. Every time she forced a smile, she felt a piece of her soul slipping away. In the crowd, she thought she saw a familiar figure for a split second, Hamza, standing at the gates, watching. But when she blinked, he was gone. Or perhaps it was only her guilty heart playing tricks on her. The suspense. The night ended with fireworks, the sky painted in colors. Yet for Aisha, all the brightness felt hollow. She had chosen her family's honor over her own happiness, wealth over love. But deep down, a storm had begun. And little did she know that decision at 18 would not be the end of her story with Hamza. It would only be the beginning. Because years later, their paths would cross again. And when they did, everything she thought she knew about life, love, and regret would shatter. Would Hamza forgive her? Would she still recognize the boy she once loved? Or would he return as someone she could never face? The answers were waiting in the future. But tonight, as Aisha stared at the fireworks through tear-filled eyes, the first cracks in her perfect world had already begun to show. The years passed like pages of a book no one wanted to read again. Aisha's life seemed perfect on the outside, married into wealth, surrounded by comfort, living in a grand house. People admired her beauty, envied her clothes, and whispered about how lucky she was to have Zion as her husband. But inside, her world was made of silence and unspoken tears. Zion had never truly seen her as a partner. To him, she was a prize, something to show off at parties and silence at home. He cared more for his business deals, his circle of influential friends, and the never-ending chase for more power. If Aisha spoke, he barely listened. If she cried, he shrugged. Slowly, her laughter faded, her smile became practiced, and her heart grew hollow. Her only escape was her young daughter, Alina, a bright little soul with curious eyes and a smile that reminded Aisha of the life she had once dreamed of. In Alina's innocence, Aisha found the love and peace that had long been denied to her. She would sit for hours telling her bedtime stories, braiding her hair, and imagining a different life, one where she had chosen love instead of fear. But the past never disappears. It hides, waiting for the right moment to return. And for Aisha, that moment came on an ordinary afternoon, years later. The sunlight streamed through the windows of a new cafe in Lahore, where businesspeople and students gathered to sip coffee and share ideas. Aisha, now in her late 20s, walked in wearing a simple dress. She wasn't there for pleasure. Zion had asked her to meet an investor on his behalf, someone important who had recently returned from abroad. She sat at a corner table, waiting, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She was nervous, though she didn't know why. Then, the door opened, and a man walked in. He looked older, stronger, and carried himself with quiet confidence. His suit was perfectly tailored, his shoes polished, but what struck her most was his eyes. Those eyes, sharp, intense, unforgettable. Her heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be. It was him. Hamza. The boy she had rejected had returned, not as the poor, desperate dreamer she remembered, but as a man transformed. Hamza didn't notice her at first. He walked with calm assurance, nodding politely at the waiter. His presence commanded respect. The people around glanced at him with curiosity, sensing something powerful in the way he carried himself. Then his gaze fell on her. For a moment, the air froze. Neither moved, neither spoke. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She felt like she was 18 again, standing at that garden gate, tears in her eyes. Hamza's expression was unreadable. No warmth, no anger, just a deep stillness that made her shiver. The waiter gestured to the table where she sat. "Sir, this lady is here to meet you." Hamza's jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded and walked over. When he sat down across from her, the silence was louder than any words. Aisha's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize, but nothing came out. Hamza finally broke the silence. His voice was calm, controlled, but heavy with meaning. "So, it's you." Her lips trembled. "Hamza. I." He raised a hand slightly, cutting her off. "Mrs. Zayan Malik, isn't it?" His tone carried a sharp edge. She flinched at the formality. "Yes, but." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Your husband asked me here. He wants to discuss a business venture. He doesn't know, does he?" Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. "No. He doesn't." A shadow of a smile flickered across Hamza's face, but it wasn't one of joy. It was the smile of a man who had learned the cost of pain. "Interesting. Life has a strange way of arranging meetings, doesn't it?" Aisha wanted to explain everything, to tell him she had been forced, that she had loved him, that she had never forgotten him. But Hamza's composure, his unreadable eyes, made her hesitate. He wasn't the same boy anymore. He was someone she didn't quite know. "Hamza, you've changed," she whispered. He looked straight at her. "I had to. Poverty changes you. Pain changes you. Being rejected by the only person you trusted changes you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was scared. I was weak. I didn't know how to fight my father." "And now," he asked, his voice firm, "are you still weak?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She lowered her gaze, unable to answer. Before she could speak again, the cafe door opened, and Zayan entered. His usual arrogant stride filled the room. He didn't notice the tension between Aisha and Hamza. To him, it was just another business meeting. "Ah, Mr. Hamza," Zayan said cheerfully, extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about your success abroad." Hamza shook his hand firmly, his face calm. "Likewise." Zayan sat beside Aisha, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. "My wife has been waiting for you. I trust she's made you comfortable?" Hamza's eyes flickered toward Aisha, then back to Zayan. His voice was even, but there was a sharp undertone. "Yes. Very comfortable." Aisha's pulse quickened. The double meaning in his words struck her deeply. As the men began discussing business, Aisha sat quietly, her mind in turmoil. Every word Hamza spoke carried layers, professional on the surface, personal underneath. She could feel the weight of his unspoken questions pressing on her. "Why did you leave me? Why did you choose him? Do you regret it?" The meeting ended with polite handshakes and promises to talk further. Zayan seemed satisfied, already boasting about their future partnership. But as they stood to leave, Hamza's eyes met Aisha's one last time. And in that silent exchange, she felt the storm of everything left unsaid. The boy she once rejected was no longer the same. He was powerful now, respected, perhaps even dangerous. And he was back in her life. What did he want? Revenge? Closure? Or something else entirely? As Aisha walked out of the cafe beside her husband, her heart trembled with a single realization: this was only the beginning. The days after that meeting were anything but ordinary. Aisha tried to return to her usual routine, taking Alina to school, attending social gatherings, fulfilling her role as Zayan's polished wife, but her mind was restless. No matter how much she tried to distract herself, the memory of Hamza's eyes in that cafe haunted her. It wasn't just that he had returned. It was how he had returned, confident, successful, and unshaken. The Hamza she had left behind had been vulnerable, pleading for her love. The Hamza she had seen now was a man who needed nothing from her. And that hurt more than anything. She caught herself replaying every word he had spoken. "Are you still weak?" That question had pierced deeper than any insult could. Because deep down, she knew the truth. She was still weak, still living in fear of her father's shadow, still bound to a man who treated her more like an accessory than a partner. But now, Hamza was part of their lives again. And she had no idea what that meant. Meanwhile, Zion was in high spirits. He was impressed by Hamza's reputation, by the stories of his rise from nothing to one of the most respected businessmen in Dubai and now back in Pakistan. One evening, while sipping his favorite drink, Zion laughed. "That man, Hamza, he's sharp. Ruthless in business, they say. I like him. We could make a lot of money together." Aisha froze. "You're planning to work with him?" "Of course," Zion replied, leaning back in his chair. "He has connections, resources, and vision. Partnering with him could open doors for me internationally." "Why do you look so nervous? Did something happen?" Aisha quickly masked her expression. "No, nothing." But inside, her heart was pounding. If Hamza became a constant presence in their business and social circles, how long could she hide the truth of their past? A week later, Zion hosted a dinner at their home. Important guests arrived, among them Hamza. When he walked into the room, dressed in an elegant black suit, the atmosphere seemed to shift. His presence commanded attention, yet he carried himself with effortless grace. Zion greeted him warmly, introducing him to everyone. "This is Mr. Hamza Khan, our new partner." When Hamza's gaze finally fell on Aisha, she felt the air escape her lungs. He didn't linger, didn't smile, just gave a polite nod before turning his attention back to the others. But that small acknowledgement sent a storm rushing through her heart. During dinner, Hamza was charming, articulate, and composed. He spoke about opportunities, about growth, about building something that would outlast them all. The guests admired him. Zion was practically glowing with pride at having secured such an ally. But Aisha couldn't shake the feeling that beneath his calm exterior, every word was aimed at her, an unspoken reminder of what he had become without her. Later that night, when the guests had left and the house was quiet, Aisha found herself walking alone in the garden. The stars above seemed dim, hidden behind drifting clouds. She hugged her shawl around her shoulders, her thoughts heavy. She didn't hear him at first. But then came a voice behind her, calm yet piercing. "You still walk here when you're troubled, don't you?" Her breath caught. She turned, and there he was. Hamza stood near the old fountain, his hands in his pockets, watching her with that same unreadable expression. "Hamza," she whispered, her heart racing. "Why are you here? What if Zion sees you?" He stepped closer, his voice steady. "I don't care if he does." "Do you?" She looked down, her voice trembling. "Please, don't make this harder." Hamza studied her silently for a moment. Then he spoke, his tone low but intense. "Tell me, Aisha. Are you happy with him?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The tears welling in her eyes said more than words ever could. Hamza's jaw tightened. "I thought so." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "It's not that simple. I have a daughter. I have responsibilities. I can't just." He interrupted sharply. "You chose this. You chose him. And now you live with it." The words struck like knives. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Hamza's expression softened slightly as he watched her. For a brief moment, the hardened man seemed to fade, and she glimpsed the boy she once loved. But just as quickly, the wall returned. "Don't cry, Aisha," he said coldly. "Your tears don't change the past. They don't change what you did." Suddenly, a sound came from the house, the click of a door, footsteps approaching. Zion's voice called from inside, "Aisha? Where are you?" Her heart leapt in panic. She turned back to Hamza, but he was already stepping away, fading into the shadows of the garden. When Zion appeared at the door, she wiped her tears quickly and forced a smile. "I was just getting some air." Zion glanced outside, suspicious for a moment, then shrugged. "Come in. Tomorrow is an important day. We need to be ready." Aisha followed him inside, but her mind was far away. The storm inside her was only growing stronger. Hamza had returned, not to beg, not to plead, but to confront the choices she had made. And she had no idea how far this battle between her past and her present was about to go. Because Hamza's presence wasn't just reopening old wounds. It was about to change everything: her marriage, her family, and her life itself. The days that followed felt heavier than ever. Aisha tried to keep her composure, smiling in front of Alina, pretending to be the perfect wife at dinners, and nodding along to Zion's endless talks about money and power. But deep inside, her heart was restless. The past, which she had buried so carefully, was no longer staying buried. Hamza's presence had ripped it open, exposing every scar she had tried to hide. Zion, however, noticed nothing unusual. Or perhaps he noticed, but didn't care. His life revolved around business meetings, phone calls that stretched late into the night, and his obsession with building a name greater than his father's. One morning, while sipping tea, Zion spoke without looking at her. "Hamza is brilliant. Ruthless, but brilliant. With him on our side, no one can compete." Aisha forced a smile. "I see." Zion finally looked up. "Why do you sound so flat? Don't you understand what this means for us?" Her voice was quiet. "Does it really matter to us? Or just to you?" His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" She shook her head quickly. "Nothing." But the truth was beginning to slip from her lips, even if she didn't intend it. That evening, Alina ran to her mother with excitement. "Mama! Guess what? Papa says I'll get to meet Uncle Hamza soon." Aisha froze. "What?" Alina clapped her small hands. "Papa says Uncle Hamza will visit us again. He said Uncle Hamza is very important now." Her chest tightened. The thought of Hamza being so close to her daughter frightened her, not because he would hurt her, but because he might see the pieces of Aisha's broken life more clearly than ever. The dinner came a few nights later. Hamza arrived at their home again, and this time, he noticed Alina first. She ran up to greet him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you really my papa's friend?" she asked innocently. Hamza bent down, a small smile flickering across his face. "Something like that." Aisha watched the exchange from a distance, her heart aching. To see Hamza and Alina in the same space, even for a few seconds, made her wonder how different life could have been if she had chosen him all those years ago. At the dinner table, conversation flowed easily between Hamza and Zion. But Aisha could sense the undercurrent in Hamza's words. He spoke of loyalty, of trust, of betrayal, but in ways that only she understood. Every glance he threw her way carried a question, a reminder. At one point, Zion raised his glass. "To partnerships that last. And to friendships that never break." Hamza clinked his glass, his voice calm. "Yes. May no one ever forget the cost of breaking trust." Aisha nearly dropped her fork. Zion laughed, oblivious, but her hands trembled under the table. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Zion received a phone call. He left the room, pacing the hallway, his voice low but angry. Aisha, unable to sleep, overheard bits of the conversation. "What do you mean the deal is slipping?" "I don't care what it takes, make it happen. If Hamza thinks he can dictate terms to me, he's mistaken." Her heart pounded. Was Zion already clashing with Hamza? Or was it just business stress? Either way, she knew tension was building. When Zion finally returned to the room, his face was tight with anger. He threw his jacket onto the chair and muttered, "People like Hamza think they can play games. They'll learn." Aisha sat up slowly. "What are you saying?" He waved her off. "Nothing for you to worry about. Just stay out of it." But she couldn't. Not anymore. The lines between her past and her present were blurring, and soon, she feared, the truth would burst into the open. The next morning, she found herself in the garden again, where Hamza was waiting. It was becoming a dangerous pattern, these secret conversations, but her heart pulled her there. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Hamza's eyes narrowed. "And yet, here we are. Tell me something, Aisha, why do you still look at me like that?" Her breath caught. "Like what?" "Like you're still carrying the weight of your choice," he said, his tone sharp. Her voice broke. "Because I am." He stepped closer, his eyes burning into hers. "Then answer me this. If I asked you right now, would you walk away from this life? Would you walk away from him?" Tears filled her eyes. She opened her mouth to answer, but a sudden voice rang out behind them. "Aisha? Who are you talking to?" She spun around in horror. Zion stood at the edge of the garden, his eyes narrowing as they fell on Hamza. Her heart stopped. The cracks in her marriage had finally begun to show, and Zion had seen them. The air turned heavy the moment Zion's eyes locked on them. His gaze moved from Aisha's pale face to Hamza's calm posture, and though no words were spoken, the silence was louder than any storm. Aisha's heart pounded so violently she thought Zion could hear it. Her throat went dry, her lips trembled, but she forced a weak smile. "Zion. Hamza just stepped out for some fresh air. I happen to be here too." Hamza's expression didn't change. He simply folded his arms across his chest, his stance strong, unafraid. Zion raised an eyebrow. "Both of you. In the garden. Alone. At this hour?" His voice was slow, suspicious. Aisha swallowed hard. "It's nothing like that." Hamza finally spoke, his voice calm and firm. "You're right, Malik Sahib. It's nothing like that. I was just leaving." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked toward the gate, his presence disappearing into the night. The sound of the gate clicking shut left a haunting echo behind. Zion's eyes, however, did not leave Aisha. They were sharp, probing, filled with questions he didn't yet voice. Inside the house, the tension followed them like a shadow. Zion poured himself a glass of water, his jaw tight. "Tell me, Aisha," he said at last, his tone cold. "How well do you know this Hamza?" Her fingers twisted in her dupatta. "He's just your business partner." "I know nothing more than what you've told me." Zion tilted his head, studying her. Strange. Because he looked at you in a way men don't usually look at strangers." Her chest tightened. "You're imagining things." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Am I? Or are you hiding something?" Aisha forced herself to hold his gaze, though her insides trembled. "There's nothing to hide." For a long moment, Zion searched her face. Then, as if deciding not to press further, for now, he leaned back and finished his water. "Good. Because if I ever found out my wife was lying to me," he let the sentence hang in the air, unfinished, but heavy with threat. Aisha turned away, her heart sinking deeper into despair. The following days, Zion's behavior shifted. He was more watchful, more possessive, and quicker to anger. Little things that once passed unnoticed now became sparks of suspicion. If Aisha was late returning from the market, he questioned her. If she received a phone call, he asked who it was. And all the while, Hamza's presence lingered. He attended meetings with Zion, visited the house for business discussions, and spoke with calm authority in gatherings. But whenever his eyes found Aisha, they carried the weight of all the things left unsaid. Aisha lived in constant fear of Zion discovering the truth, fear of Hamza's quiet reminders, fear of her own heart that refused to stay buried. One evening, Aisha overheard a heated argument in Zion's study. His voice was raised, filled with fury. "I don't care how powerful he thinks he is. No one controls me. If Hamza believes he can outmaneuver me, he's wrong." A second voice, his business associate, spoke more cautiously. "But sir, Hamza's influence is growing. People respect him. Even investors trust him more than they trust you." There was a crash, the sound of glass shattering. I built everything I have with my own hands. No one will overshadow me. No one. Aisha's breath caught. It was clear now, Zion didn't just see Hamza as a partner. He saw him as a threat. And threats were something Zion never tolerated. That night, when Aisha tucked Alina into bed, the little girl whispered, "Mama, I like Uncle Hamza. He talks nicely to me. He listens. Papa never listens." Aisha's heart ached at the innocent words. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Go to sleep, Mary John." But her mind was racing. If Alina could feel the difference between Zion and Hamza, what would happen when Zion realized it too? Later, Aisha sat alone in the garden, staring at the stars. She thought of her youth, of the night she had turned Hamza away, of the pain that decision had carved into her life. And now, fate had brought him back, not as a suitor, but as a storm threatening to tear apart everything around her. Her tears fell silently as she whispered into the night, "Ya Allah, what am I supposed to do?" A shadow moved behind her. She turned, startled, and saw Hamza standing there once more. "You're still crying for the same reason," he said softly, though his voice carried steel. "But Aisha, crying won't save you this time." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the veranda. She froze. Zion's figure appeared, his eyes narrowing as he looked between them. The silence that followed was suffocating. This time, there would be no easy excuse. The night air was heavy, the silence tense enough to choke. Aisha's pulse hammered in her ears as Zion stepped closer, his gaze sharp as a blade, shifting between her and Hamza. The flickering garden lights cast long shadows, making the moment feel more dangerous than it already was. Zion's lips curled into a thin, cold smile. "Again?" His voice was quiet, but each word dripped with suspicion. "What is it with the two of you meeting in gardens, Aisha swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think, Zion. I just..." Hamza's calm tone cut across her words. "I was the one who wanted to speak with her. About Alina. She reminds me of my younger sister. I told Aisha I'd like to see her succeed, maybe help with her schooling abroad someday." Nothing more. Aisha turned to him in shock. Hamza's lie was quick, smooth, convincing. For a moment, even she almost believed it. Zion tilted his head, studying Hamza carefully. "Is that so?" "Yes," Hamza replied, his expression steady, unshaken. "But if my presence bothers you, Malik Sahib, I'll leave." Zion let out a short, humorless laugh. "No, no. Stay. I wouldn't want my partner to feel unwelcome." His emphasis on the word partner was sharp, biting. "But next time, Hamza, don't make my wife your messenger. Speak to me directly." Hamza gave a faint nod, his eyes lingering on Aisha for the briefest moment before he walked away, disappearing into the night once more. When the gate clicked shut behind him, Zion turned on Aisha. His face was controlled, but his eyes blazed with unspoken fury. "You," he said slowly, "are testing my patience." Aisha's hands shook. "I told you, it wasn't." He raised his hand, not to strike her, but to silence her. "Enough. I don't know what history exists between you and Hamza, but let me make one thing clear, if I ever find you betraying me, Aisha, I'll destroy both of you." Her breath caught, fear flooding her chest. Zion leaned closer, his whisper venomous. "Do you understand?" She nodded quickly, her eyes stinging with tears. "Good." He straightened, his tone suddenly casual. "Now go inside. We have guests tomorrow, and I want everything perfect." And with that, he walked away, leaving her trembling in the garden, her heart shattered and her future uncertain. The next day, the house buzzed with preparation for the dinner party. Servants hurried with trays, decorations were arranged, and the sound of laughter drifted from the guests as they arrived. Zion played the perfect host, charming and confident, as though the storm of last night had never happened. But Aisha couldn't shake the weight of his threat. Every smile she forced felt like a mask about to crack. Hamza arrived later, calm and collected as always. His presence drew attention, People gravitated toward him, impressed by his reputation and charisma. Aisha kept her distance, but her eyes betrayed her every time he entered the room. She felt his presence like a spark in the air. At one point, Alina slipped from her mother's side and ran to Hamza, tugging at his sleeve. "Uncle, will you tell me a story later? Mama says you know many." Hamza crouched down, his expression softening. "Of course, little one. But only if your mama agrees." Aisha's chest tightened. She forced a smile and nodded, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The innocent bond between Hamza and Alina was growing, and that scared her more than anything. Late that night, after the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Aisha sat by Alina's bed, stroking her hair as the child slept. She whispered softly, as though speaking to herself, "What have I done?" Her thoughts swirled with regret, guilt, and fear. She had chosen wealth over love, and now both worlds were colliding, threatening to shatter everything she had tried to protect. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Aisha turned sharply, her breath catching. Zion stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He walked in slowly, his eyes scanning her face, then the sleeping child. "You've been restless lately," he said quietly. "I'm just tired," she whispered. He stared at her for a long moment. Then his lips curved into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Tired women make mistakes, Aisha. Careful you don't make one you'll regret." Her stomach twisted. He knew. Or at least, he suspected. And Zion was not the kind of man who forgave easily. As he turned and walked away, Aisha sat frozen in the dim light, fear gripping her heart. Zion's suspicion was no longer just a passing thought. It was growing, feeding, waiting. And soon, it would consume them all. The morning dawned with the sky painted in hues of soft gold and pale blue, but the Malik mansion carried no peace with it. The grand corridors echoed with hurried footsteps, the metallic clatter of trays, and whispers among servants who sensed the tension between their masters. Something invisible yet heavy hung in the air, like a storm gathering over calm waters. Aisha sat at the breakfast table, her hands wrapped tightly around a porcelain teacup that had long gone cold. Zion scrolled through his phone with the same relaxed confidence he always displayed, but she could feel his eyes flicking to her in quick, sharp glances. Each one felt like a needle pricking her skin. "Alina," Zion said suddenly, his tone warm, "how would you like to spend the weekend in Murray? A little family vacation, HM?" Alina's face lit up. "Really, Papa? Snow?" "Yes, snow," he chuckled, ruffling her hair. "We'll make a snowman, just you and me." Aisha forced a smile, but unease crawled through her. Zion rarely suggested family trips. He was planning something, she could feel it. Later that day, while Aisha supervised the packing of clothes and essentials, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I need to speak to you before you leave. Tonight. Garden. Urgent." Her heart skipped. She didn't need to guess it was Hamza. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward the hallway where Zion's footsteps echoed faintly. Was this another trap? Or was Hamza truly in danger? Her fingers shook as she tucked the phone away. She knew meeting him again could risk everything. But something inside her whispered she had no choice. That night, the garden was eerily quiet, the lamps casting long shadows on the stone pathway. Aisha's breath fogged in the cool air as she waited, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. Hamza appeared from the far end, his coat draped over his shoulders, his expression tense. "You shouldn't have come," Aisha whispered, her voice trembling. "And yet, here you are," Hamza replied softly. His eyes held a storm, a mixture of anger and pain. "Zion doesn't trust you anymore. I can see it in the way he looks at you. Aisha, he's setting a trap." Her heart lurched. "What do you mean?" Hamza stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This sudden family trip, it's not for leisure. He's isolating you. Testing you. If he catches even a hint of what lies between us, he won't just ruin you, Aisha, he'll ruin me too." Tears stung her eyes. "I never wanted this. I thought marrying him would protect my family. That sacrificing you was the only way. Hamza's jaw clenched, his pain flashing across his face. And now? Do you still believe that? Her lips parted, but no words came. A rustling sound broke the moment. Aisha froze, her breath caught in her throat. Hamza's head turned sharply toward the shadows near the hedge. They weren't alone. A faint red glow blinked from the darkness. A camera. Hidden. Recording. Aisha's blood ran cold. She grabbed Hamza's arm, her whisper urgent. Go. Now. Hamza's eyes darkened as realization hit him. Without another word, he vanished into the shadows. Aisha, trembling, walked quickly back toward the mansion, her heart pounding like a war drum. Inside, Zion sat in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't look up when she entered. You took a long walk, he said casually, swirling the amber liquid. Her throat tightened. The air helps me think. He finally lifted his gaze, his smile thin, sharp. Good. You'll need a clear mind where we're going. Aisha's hands curled into fists at her side. She knew then he had seen. Or at least, he had recorded enough to twist the truth. The walls were closing in. Her marriage, her child's safety, Hamza's future, everything was hanging by a thread. And Zion was holding the scissors. The road to Murray twisted like a serpent through the mountains, fog rolling over the valleys below like restless ghosts. The Malik family's black SUV climbed steadily, its tinted windows hiding the storm brewing inside. Alina sat in the back seat with her head resting against her mother's lap, humming softly to herself, innocent to the silent war of emotions around her. Aisha stroked her daughter's hair, her mind far away. Each bend in the road made her stomach tighten. She couldn't stop thinking of the red blinking light she had seen in the garden. Had Zion already watched the recording? Or was he waiting for the perfect moment to use it against her? Zion drove with his usual composure, his hand steady on the wheel, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. But every so often, Aisha caught him glancing at her through the rearview mirror, his eyes unreadable. Are you cold? He asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Aisha flinched slightly. No, I'm fine. Good, he said softly, his lips curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The mansion in Murray stood tall against the snowy landscape, its windows glowing warmly. To anyone else, it was the perfect retreat, luxurious, isolated, peaceful. But to Aisha, it felt like a gilded cage. The first evening passed in uneasy quiet. Zion poured himself a drink by the fireplace, Alina played with her toys on the rug, and Aisha sat on the couch, pretending to read a book. Every tick of the clock felt louder, every flicker of the flames sharper. At one point, Zion leaned back in his chair, swirling his glass. You know, Aisha, he said, his tone deceptively calm, mountains are interesting places. Secrets can be buried here, never to be found again. Her breath caught. She lifted her eyes slowly to meet his. What do you mean? He smirked. Only that people should be careful about what they hide. Her fingers tightened around the book, her pulse racing. He knew. Or at least, he wanted her to believe he knew. That night, after Alina had fallen asleep, Aisha stood by the window, gazing at the snow drifting down under the pale moonlight. The silence of the mountains pressed in on her, cold and suffocating. Her phone buzzed suddenly. A message. She grabbed it quickly, her hands trembling. It was from Hamza. I know where you are. Be careful. Zion has plans. Don't let him corner you. Aisha's breath came in short gasps. She turned toward the bed where Zion lay, seemingly asleep. But even in the dim light, she could see his chest rising slowly, his body too still. He wasn't asleep. He was listening. Her fingers hovered over the phone, torn between replying and staying silent. Before she could decide, Zion's voice broke the quiet. Who are you texting? Her blood froze. She slipped the phone under her shawl, forcing a calm tone. Just, my mother. She was worried about Alina in the cold. Zion chuckled softly, turning onto his side, his face half lit by the moon. Ah, mothers. Always worried. Good. Keep it that way. He closed his eyes again, but Aisha didn't believe for a second that he was truly asleep. The following day, Zion suggested they go for a walk in the woods behind the mansion. Snow crunched under their boots as they made their way through the pines. Alina skipped ahead, her laughter echoing through the trees. Aisha walked beside her husband, her heart pounding with every step. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was leading her somewhere she didn't want to go. Finally, they reached a clearing. Zion stopped, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying an eerie silence with it. He turned to her slowly, his eyes dark. "Tell me the truth, Aisha. What is between you and Hamza?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Her throat burned with fear. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Don't lie to me. I've seen enough to know you're hiding something." Her heart raced so fast it felt like it might burst. She wanted to scream, to tell him everything, but she knew the cost. If she confessed, he would destroy Hamza and perhaps her as well. Zion's hand reached out, gripping her chin firmly, forcing her to look into his eyes. "This is your last chance, Aisha. Tell me, or I'll find out myself." The snow fell heavier around them, blanketing the silence. Aisha's tears spilled, her body trembling. She opened her mouth, ready to speak, when suddenly, Alina's voice rang out from the trees. "Mama! Papa! Look what I found!" Both of them turned sharply. Alina stood holding something half buried in the snow. A small, black device, blinking faintly red. Aisha's heart stopped. Zion's eyes flickered to hers, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. The red blink was faint but sharp, like the heartbeat of something alive in Alina's small hands. Aisha's stomach knotted, her blood rushing to her ears. Zion walked toward his daughter slowly, his boots crunching through the snow, his smile as calm as if she had handed him a flower instead of a secret. "Careful, Beatty," he said, kneeling down. "Let me see what you've found." Alina, innocent and proud, held the device out. "It was hiding under the snow, Papa. Like treasure." Zion took it, brushing the frost away, revealing the small lens and wires beneath. He turned it in his hand, the light blinking against his eyes. His smile grew wider. "A treasure indeed," he whispered. Aisha's breath caught. Her legs felt weak, as though the ground beneath her was giving way. She knew it, this was the camera from the garden. The proof. And now, it was in Zion's hands. That evening, the fire in the Murray mansion burned bright, casting warm light across the wooden walls. But to Aisha, the warmth felt suffocating. Zion sat in his armchair, the device on the table beside him, swirling a glass of whiskey as though he had all the time in the world. Alina had been sent to bed early. The silence between husband and wife was heavy, broken only by the occasional crackle of the firewood. Finally, Zion spoke. "You see, Aisha, I always believed the mountains reveal the truth. And today, they did." He tapped the device lightly, the blinking light reflecting in his eyes. "Do you want to know what I saw?" Her throat tightened. She shook her head slightly, but he continued anyway. "You, standing in the garden at night. Talking. Whispering. With him." His jaw clenched, his voice growing sharper. "Do you think I'm a fool? Do you think I wouldn't notice the way he looks at you? The way you look at him?" Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. "It wasn't what you think." "Don't," he snapped, his voice echoing through the room. He leaned forward, his face inches from hers. "I don't need explanations. I have proof." Her chest tightened, her breaths coming quick. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Zion leaned back, his expression suddenly calm, almost mocking. "Obedience. Silence. And loyalty. From this moment on, Aisha, you are mine not just in name, but in soul. If you even think about Hamza again," he let the sentence hang in the air, his meaning clear. That night, Aisha lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while Zion slept soundly beside her. Her heart felt trapped in a cage. The threat wasn't only against her, it was against Hamza too. She rose quietly, slipping into the hallway, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. In the dim light, she clutched her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed a message. He knows. He has proof. Don't come near me. He'll destroy you if you do. She hesitated, tears falling onto the screen, then pressed send. The next morning, Zayan was in unusually high spirits. He laughed with Alina over breakfast, complimented Aisha on her cooking, and even suggested a family outing into the town. To any outsider, he looked like the perfect husband and father. But Aisha knew better. His happiness wasn't real, it was triumph. He had her cornered now, and he enjoyed every second of it. As they prepared to leave, her phone buzzed with a reply from Hamza. Let him think he's won. I won't back down. I'll protect you and Alina, no matter the cost. Her chest tightened as she read the words. Fear and hope clashed violently within her. She slipped the phone into her pocket quickly before Zayan noticed, but he was watching her closely, his sharp eyes never missing a thing. Who's that? He asked casually, slipping on his coat. Aisha's lips parted, her mind scrambling for an answer. The silence stretched too long. Zayan's smile thinned. Careful, Aisha, he said softly, almost sweetly. One wrong move, and you'll regret it. Her heart pounded as she followed him and Alina out into the snow, her mind racing. Hamza wasn't going to disappear quietly. Zayan wasn't going to forgive. And Aisha? She was standing in the middle of a battlefield with no way out. The snow-covered streets of Murray bustled with tourists that morning. Families sipped hot tea at roadside stalls, children threw snowballs, and the sound of laughter echoed through the crisp air. But for Aisha, the cheerful scene blurred into background noise. She walked beside Zayan and Alina, her shawl wrapped tightly around her, every step heavy with dread. Zayan was unusually warm, holding Alina's hand as they strolled. To anyone watching, they were the picture of a happy family. But Aisha knew better, the smile on his face was the mask of a predator who had cornered his prey. As they passed a row of shops, Aisha's eyes caught something unexpected. Across the street, leaning casually against a parked jeep, stood Hamza. He wore a dark coat, his gaze sharp and unyielding, fixed directly on her. Her breath hitched. Her steps faltered. Zayan noticed immediately. His hand on Alina tightened. He followed her line of sight and spotted Hamza. For a moment, his face remained calm, but his eyes hardened, a storm brewing behind them. Hamza didn't move. He simply stood there, a silent message in his presence, I'm here. I won't let him break you. Back at the mansion, Zayan paced the living room like a caged animal, his glass of whiskey untouched. Aisha sat tensely on the couch, watching him, dreading the explosion she knew was coming. Finally, he stopped, his voice low and dangerous. So, he followed us here. Aisha swallowed hard. Maybe it was coincidence. Coincidence? Zayan cut her off, his laugh sharp. Don't insult my intelligence, Aisha. He's playing a game. But he doesn't realize I always win. She clenched her fists in her lap. Please, Zayan. Don't do anything reckless. Alina. His eyes snapped to her, blazing. Don't you dare lecture me about our daughter's safety. If anything happens, it will be because you dragged that man back into our lives. Tears burned her eyes. She wanted to scream that it wasn't like that Hamza had never stopped loving her, that she had once loved him too. But her fear for Hamza's life sealed her lips shut. That night, the storm outside howled through the mountains, rattling the windows. Aisha tucked Alina into bed, humming softly, trying to shield her daughter from the tension that poisoned the house. When she stepped into the hallway, she froze. Hamza was there. Standing in the shadows at the far end. Her heart pounded. Hamza, she whispered, rushing toward him, her eyes wide with fear. What are you doing here? If Zayan. I had to see you, Hamza said firmly, his voice low but urgent. He won't stop, Aisha. He's tightening the noose around you. But I won't stand by anymore. I have friends, influence. I can fight him. But I need to know, are you with me, or not? Her breath trembled. You don't understand. He has proof, he's watching everything. If he finds you here, it will destroy you. Hamza's jaw clenched. Then let him try. I'm not afraid of him. Aisha grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. But I am, Hamza. I'm terrified. For you. For Alina. Their eyes locked, the silence between them heavy with all the words left unsaid. Suddenly, a creak echoed down the hall. Aisha's blood ran cold. She turned her head slowly, only to see Zayan standing at the top of the staircase, his expression calm, his eyes dark as night. Well, he said softly, his lips curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes, isn't this touching? Aisha's heart dropped into her stomach. Hamza straightened, unflinching, meeting Zayan's gaze head-on. And for the first time, Aisha realized the real war had begun. The silence in the hallway was suffocating. Only the storm outside dared to speak, its wind shrieking against the old mansion walls. Aisha stood frozen between the two men, her husband, Zayan, and the man she had once loved, Hamza. Her pulse thundered in her ears, her lips trembling with words that refused to escape. Zayan descended the staircase slowly, each step deliberate, his calmness more terrifying than rage. You followed us, he said quietly, his eyes locked on Hamza. Into my house. Into my family's space. Bold. Hamza didn't flinch. I didn't come to fight you, Malik Sahib. I came to protect what you're destroying. His eyes flicked briefly toward Aisha, then back to Zayan. A bitter laugh escaped Zayan's lips. Protect? From me? He spread his arms slightly. Tell me, Hamza, what are you protecting her from? A husband who gave her everything she could ever want? A father who cherishes his daughter? Or are you protecting her from her own choices, the ones she regrets now that you've reappeared? Aisha's throat tightened. Zayan, please. Quiet, he barked, his voice sharp as glass. His eyes never left Hamza. You see, Hamza, I know men like you. You play the hero, swooping in, claiming to save. But really, you want what isn't yours. Isn't that right? Hamza's jaw hardened. Aisha is not an object, Malik Sahib. She's not yours to own. She deserves freedom, respect, peace. The words landed like sparks on dry wood. Zayan's smile vanished, replaced with a cold, burning fury. Aisha stepped forward, desperation in her voice. Stop this, both of you. Please. Alina is asleep just a few steps away, what if she wakes up and sees? Her plea was cut short as Zayan suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Hamza by the collar. The two men clashed, their struggle shaking the quiet house. Hamza shoved back, slamming Zayan against the wall. You think you can take her from me? Zayan growled, his fist tightening. I don't need to take her, Hamza spat back. She was never truly yours. The words were like fire poured into Zayan's veins. With a roar, he swung, his fist connecting with Hamza's jaw. Aisha screamed, rushing forward, trying to pull them apart. Hamza staggered but retaliated, striking Zayan across the face. The sound echoed like thunder. For a moment, the mansion felt like it was collapsing under the weight of their rage. Enough! Aisha cried, her voice cracking as she threw herself between them, her arms outstretched. Tears streaked her face, her body trembling. Stop, please. You'll destroy everything. Both men froze, their chests heaving, their eyes burning with hatred, but neither moved. The silence was broken by a small, frightened voice. Mama? Aisha turned sharply. At the end of the hallway, in her nightdress, stood little Alina, rubbing her eyes, her teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. Her innocent gaze flicked between her father, her mother, and the strange man she had grown to like. Zayan's fury melted into something colder, something calculated. He straightened, wiping the blood from his lip, and forced a smile for his daughter. Go back to bed, princess. Everything is fine. But Alina's eyes lingered on Hamza, sensing the truth her father's words tried to hide. Later, when Alina had been coaxed back into bed, Zayan returned to the living room. His face was bruised, but his voice was calm, chillingly so. "You made a mistake tonight, Hamza," he said, pouring himself a drink with steady hands. "A big one. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Hamza, though bleeding at the lip, stood tall. "I don't fear you, Malik Sahib. I never have." Zayan smirked, raising his glass. "Then you're a bigger fool than I thought." Aisha sat on the couch, her hands covering her face, her tears unstoppable. She knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Zayan had power, money, influence. Hamza had courage, determination, and a heart that refused to let go. And she? She was trapped between them, her daughter's future hanging in the balance. The clash of rivals had begun, and only one man would walk away victorious. The following morning, the Malik mansion in Murray was unnervingly quiet. Snow covered the rooftops and trees, muffling every sound. But inside, tension pressed against the walls like an invisible storm. Aisha moved through the kitchen, preparing Alina's breakfast with trembling hands. The clatter of a spoon against a plate made her flinch, as if even the smallest noise might shatter the fragile calm. Zayan entered, his face freshly shaven, his expensive coat draped over his arm. The bruise on his cheek was carefully concealed with makeup, but Aisha's eyes caught it immediately. "Where's Alina?" he asked coolly, pouring himself coffee. "She's still asleep," Aisha whispered. "Good. Keep her that way." He sipped his drink, his eyes fixed on her. "I have business to handle today. You'll stay here. With her." Her heart skipped. "Business? In Murray?" Zayan's lips curved into a smile that carried no warmth. "Yes. Someone needs a reminder of his place." Aisha's stomach dropped. She knew who he meant. Hours later, Hamza sat in a cafe on the edge of town, his bruised jaw stiff, his coat collar raised against the cold. He stared out the window, his mind replaying the confrontation in the hallway. He wasn't afraid for himself, but Aisha and Alina haunted his thoughts. A man slid into the chair opposite him. One of Zayan's men, Hamza recognized him instantly. Broad shoulders, a scar on his brow, the kind of man who lived in shadows. The man leaned forward, his voice low. "Leave. Tonight. Don't come near the Malik family again. Otherwise, accidents happen in these mountains." Hamza's fists clenched under the table. "Tell your boss I don't run from threats. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. But I won't abandon them." The man smirked, standing up. "Then pray your stubbornness doesn't bury you alive." Hamza watched him leave, his jaw tightening. He knew Zayan's reach was vast. He couldn't fight him with fists alone, he would need something stronger. Proof. Evidence. The truth. Back at the mansion, Aisha tried to distract Alina with stories and games, but her daughter's innocent questions broke her heart. "Mama, why was Papa fighting with Uncle Hamza?" Aisha froze, her eyes stinging. "They weren't fighting, baby. They were just talking loudly." Alina frowned. But Papa was angry. And Uncle Hamza looked sad. Her small words sliced through Aisha like a knife. She pulled her daughter close, whispering, "No matter what happens, I will always protect you." Yet even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. Could she really protect her child from Zayan's fury? From the web of lies tightening around them all? That evening, as snow fell in heavy sheets, Zayan returned. His shoes were wet, his coat dusted white, but his mood was calm, too calm. He kissed Alina's forehead, asked about her day, and laughed with her as if nothing had happened. But when Aisha caught his eye across the dinner table, she saw it. That hidden fire. That warning. Later, when Alina was asleep, Zayan poured himself a drink and beckoned Aisha to sit opposite him. "You know what I hate most in this world?" he asked casually. Aisha's voice shook. "What?" "Liars." He took a slow sip, then leaned forward. "And you've been lying to me, Aisha." haven't you? Her breath faltered. I haven't. Don't. His voice was sharp now. I have enough to destroy him. And you. But I'm giving you a choice. Her hands trembled in her lap. Choice? Zion's smile returned, cold and cruel. Yes. You'll prove your loyalty to me. Completely. Or you'll watch Hamza's life crumble before your eyes. The fire crackled in the silence. Aisha's tears spilled as the net around her tightened, trapping her with no escape. For the first time, she realized Zion didn't just want obedience, he wanted to own her soul. And Hamza? He was already marked for destruction. The next morning, Murray's Hills were swallowed by a thick fog, the kind that clung to skin and turned every shadow into something menacing. The Malik mansion loomed like a fortress, silent except for the occasional creak of wooden floors. Aisha sat on the edge of her bed, her hands clasped tightly together. She hadn't slept. Zion's words from the night before echoed in her head, replaying again and again until her mind felt bruised. You'll prove your loyalty, or you'll watch Hamza's life crumble. Her chest tightened at the memory. She looked at Alina, still sleeping peacefully, her little hand curled around her toy rabbit. For Alina's sake, she had to be strong. But how much longer could she live in this prison of threats and lies? Downstairs, Zion was already dressed, scrolling through his phone. His demeanor was relaxed, almost cheerful. Aisha, he said without looking up, we're going out today. A family trip. Pack Alina's things. She hesitated. Where are we going? He finally looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. To remind your friend of his limits. And I want Alina to see what happens to men who don't know their place. Her heart nearly stopped. Zion, no. She's just a child. Exactly. Better she learns early that her father's word is law. His voice was sharp, final. Aisha's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream, to tear him apart for daring to use their daughter in his games, but the danger was too real. Meanwhile, Hamza was in his modest hotel room, staring at the stack of papers spread across his bed. He'd been digging quietly into Zion's business dealings, calling in favors from old friends in Karachi, Lahore, even Dubai. One folder, delivered in secrecy the night before, contained what he needed: forged accounts, shell companies, black money trails leading back to Zion Malik. It was enough to bring him down, but exposing him would also expose Aisha, drag her and Alina into a public storm. Hamza rubbed his temples, torn. If I move now, they'll be safe from him, but ruined by the world's eyes. The knock on his door startled him. He opened it to find a trembling young man, one of Zion's staff, his driver. Sir, I can't stay quiet anymore. He made me deliver money to people I shouldn't even mention. If the police knew. Hamza grabbed him by the shoulders. Then help me. Stand with me. It's the only way to stop him. The boy's eyes darted nervously. If he finds out, I'm dead. Hamza's voice hardened. If you stay silent, you're already dead. Back at the mansion, Aisha dressed Alina in a warm coat, her heart breaking with every button she fastened. Are we going somewhere fun, Mama? Alina asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Aisha forced a smile. Yes, baby. Just stay close to me. As they stepped outside, Zion's luxury SUV waited at the gate, its engine rumbling. He held the door open, his hand resting possessively on Aisha's back as she climbed in. The ride down the foggy mountain roads was suffocating. Zion hummed softly to himself while Alina gazed out the window at the snow. Only Aisha noticed the darkness in his eyes, the storm brewing beneath his calm. And then, Zion turned to her. When we arrive, Aisha, you'll do exactly as I say. Do you understand? Her throat was dry. And if I don't? He leaned closer, his whisper venomous. Then I'll make sure your precious Hamza disappears forever. Accidents happen on these roads, you know. Aisha swallowed back tears, trapped between terror and defiance. They pulled up to a secluded clearing where Hamza was already waiting. His coat collar was raised against the cold, but his eyes burned when he saw them step out of the SUV. "Aisha," he said in shock. His gaze fell to little Alina, clutching her mother's hand. "You brought her here?" Zayan smirked. "Of course. A lesson is useless if it isn't witnessed." Hamza stepped forward, his voice firm. "Zayan, whatever this is, leave her out of it. She doesn't deserve this." "Neither did I deserve your interference," Zayan shot back. "But since you can't stay away, we'll settle this now." Alina clung tighter to her mother, frightened by the tension in the air. Zayan reached into his coat pocket, pulling out something metallic gleaming in the gray light. Aisha gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Zayan, no," she cried. Hamza's eyes narrowed, bracing himself. And in that frozen moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The clearing was silent, except for the crunch of snow beneath Zayan's shoes as he stepped closer to Hamza. His hand tightened around the gleaming object he had pulled from his coat pocket. For a terrifying second, Aisha thought it was a gun. But when the cold light hit it, her breath hitched. It was a knife. Long, sharp, the kind that didn't just wound, but made a statement. Alina whimpered and buried her face against her mother's coat. Aisha pulled her close, her heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the wind. "Zayan, please," Aisha begged, stepping between them. "Not in front of her. She's just a child." Zayan tilted his head, his smile icy. "Exactly why she must see this. Weakness has no place in my family." Hamza's fists clenched at his sides. "If you want me, then come at me. But leave them out of this." Zayan laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about you, Hamza. It's about her." He jabbed the knife toward Aisha. "About making sure she remembers who she belongs to." Aisha's blood ran cold. She could feel Alina trembling in her arms. Hamza took a bold step forward, his voice ringing with fury. "Touch her, and I swear you'll regret it for the rest of your miserable life." Zayan's smile faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of rage. He lunged forward, the knife flashing in the air. Aisha screamed. Alina cried out. Hamza moved instinctively, shoving Aisha and Alina back as Zayan slashed at him. The blade caught Hamza's coat, tearing fabric, narrowly missing his chest. Snow scattered under their feet as the two men struggled, each push and shove echoing with years of buried anger and betrayal. "Stay down, Hamza," Zayan snarled, pressing the knife closer. "You've already lost." Hamza gritted his teeth, his voice steady despite the danger. "No, Zayan. The only thing I ever lost was her. And I won't lose her again to your madness." Aisha shielded Alina behind her, her mind racing. She couldn't just stand there. She had to do something, anything. Her eyes darted to the SUV, to the road, to the possibility of escape. But if she ran, Zayan would hunt them down. The fight was vicious. Hamza grabbed Zayan's wrist, twisting it hard, trying to pry the knife free. Zayan growled, his face twisted with fury, his strength fueled by obsession. Finally, with a desperate shove, Hamza sent the knife clattering onto the icy ground. It slid across the snow, stopping just inches from Aisha's feet. Her eyes locked on it. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Could she? Zayan's roar tore her back to reality as he tackled Hamza again. The two men fell into the snow, fists flying. Blood stained the whiteness beneath them. Aisha's hands trembled as she bent, fingers brushing the cold steel of the knife. She lifted it, her reflection glinting in the blade. Behind her, Alina whispered through tears, "Mama, please." Aisha's heart pounded. Every choice she had avoided for years had led to this moment. Would she finally stand against Zayan? Would she risk it all to protect Hamza and Alina, or would fear paralyze her once again? The knife felt heavier in her hands than any burden she had ever carried. Her breath caught as Zayan's bloodied face turned toward her, his eyes widening when he saw the blade gripped in her shaking hand. "Aisha," he hissed. "Put it down." But her hand didn't lower. For the first time, Zayn Malik saw something in her eyes he had never seen before: defiance. And that terrified him more than the knife itself. The knife gleamed in Aisha's trembling hands, the blade catching the gray light of the snowy clearing. Her breaths came fast and uneven, fogging the icy air. For years she had been silent, obedient, trapped, but now, with her daughter's sobs in her ears and Hamza bleeding in the snow, something inside her cracked open. Zayn froze where he knelt, his grip still locked on Hamza's collar. His eyes narrowed at the sight of the blade. "Aisha," he said slowly, his tone low, dangerous. "You don't have the courage. You never did." Aisha's heart pounded against her ribs. Her arm trembled, but her eyes burned with a fire he hadn't seen before. "Don't test me, Zayn," she whispered. Hamza, struggling to breathe under Zayn's weight, managed to choke out, "Aisha, don't put it down. Whatever you do, don't give it back to him." Alina, clutching her mother's coat, cried, "Mama, please, let's go home." Aisha's soul tore apart at the sound. There was no going home. Not anymore. Zayn slowly rose to his feet, brushing snow from his expensive coat, his face smeared with blood. He didn't step forward, he didn't need to. His voice carried enough menace. "You think you can stop me? With that?" He gestured at the knife. "You've been weak all your life, Aisha. You couldn't stand up to me before. You couldn't leave me. And now you think a little blade will change anything?" His smirk was cruel, confident. "You won't do it. Because deep down, you're still mine." Those words ignited something in her chest, a fury that drowned her fear. She tightened her grip, her knuckles white. "No," she said, her voice steady now. "I was never yours. You only caged me." For the first time, Zayn's smirk faltered. Hamza pushed himself upright, blood dripping from his brow. He looked at Aisha, his eyes filled with both fear and admiration. He could see her strength, but he also knew how dangerous this moment was. "Aisha," he said softly, "listen to me. You don't have to kill him. You just have to choose. Right here, right now, who you stand with." Her hands trembled. She looked at Hamza, battered but unbroken. She looked at her daughter, innocent eyes wide with terror. And then she looked at Zayn, the man who had destroyed her youth, who thought fear could chain her forever. The silence pressed down until it felt unbearable. The snow fell heavier, muffling the world, making the moment feel like eternity. Then Aisha stepped forward, the knife glinting at her side. Zayn stiffened, his jaw tightening. "Careful, Aisha." She stopped just inches from him, her gaze unflinching. Her voice was low but clear. "This ends today." Zayn scoffed. "And what will you do? Stab me? In front of your daughter?" Aisha leaned closer, her words sharp as the blade. "If it means saving her from becoming like me, I'll do worse." For the first time, Zayn's mask of control cracked. His eyes darted from the knife to her face, and he realized she wasn't bluffing. Hamza rose shakily to his feet, standing beside her. His presence was steady, protective, as if silently telling her she wasn't alone anymore. Alina, still clutching her mother's coat, whispered, "Mama." Aisha glanced at her daughter, then at Hamza. And in that instant, she made her choice. She dropped the knife into the snow. Zayn's eyes widened, first in surprise, then in triumph. But before he could move, Hamza stepped forward, fists clenched. "No more," Hamza growled, his voice thunder in the cold air. "You've had your last day of control, Zayn." The two men stood face to face, the storm of years ready to break. And behind them, Aisha pulled her daughter close, knowing that though she had dropped the knife, she had picked up something far more dangerous, her own voice, her own strength. What would happen next in this brutal confrontation? Would Hamza finally end Zayn's reign of terror, or would Zayn strike back harder than ever? The snow seemed to wait with them, holding its breath for the choice yet to come. The clearing was no longer silent. The wind howled through the trees, scattering snow across the scene like shards of glass. Hamza and Zayn stood locked in a deadly stare, their breath steaming in the frozen air. Aisha clutched Alina tightly, her heart pounding. Though she had dropped the knife, her resolve was unshakable. For the first time in years, she felt she was no longer a prisoner. She had chosen to stand against Xian. But Xian's rage was far from over. "You think this is finished?" he hissed, his lips curling into a snarl. "You drop a knife, and suddenly you're free? No, Aisha. You will never be free of me." Hamza stepped forward, blood still staining his face, but his voice was steady. "Yes, she will. Because today, Xian. I'm ending this." Xian lunged, his fists striking with brutal force. Hamza staggered back, blocking as best he could. Their fight was raw, desperate, every blow carrying years of bitterness, every strike a demand for justice. Snow flew under their boots as they grappled, Xian's strength matched by Hamza's sheer determination. The crack of knuckles against skin echoed through the clearing, each punch louder than the last. Aisha shielded Alina's eyes, but she couldn't look away. She could see it in Hamza's face, he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. For Alina. For the life they had all been denied. "Stay down!" Xian roared, shoving Hamza into the snow. Hamza spat blood, pushing himself up again. "Not until she's safe from you. Not until she can breathe without fear." Xian's fury boiled over. He reached into his coat once more, pulling out a second weapon, a pistol, cold and black against the white snow. Aisha's scream pierced the clearing. "Xian, stop!" Hamza froze, his eyes locked on the gun. He knew one wrong move could end it all. Xian aimed the barrel directly at Hamza's chest. His hands didn't shake, his power had always come from fear, and now he held the ultimate tool of fear in his grip. "You've been a thorn in my side long enough," Xian spat. "Time to remove you forever." The world seemed to slow. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Alina whimpered, clutching tighter to her. Hamza's gaze never wavered. "Go ahead, Xian. Shoot me. But remember this, if you do, you'll never own her again. Because once fear is gone, you have nothing left." For the first time, Xian hesitated. The standoff stretched into eternity. The snow fell heavier, muffling every sound but the thundering of their hearts. Then, without warning, Hamza lunged. His hand struck the gun, shoving it upward just as it went off. The shot cracked through the forest, echoing for miles. A flock of birds burst from the trees. The bullet tore into the branches above, showering them with splinters and snow. The gun clattered to the ground. Both men dove for it, rolling in the snow, fists and elbows colliding with bone. "Hamza!" Aisha cried, clutching Alina, torn between fear and hope. The gun slid across the ice again, stopping near the knife still buried in the snow. Two weapons. One choice. Both men scrambled, breathless, desperate, reaching for the steel that could decide everything. And Aisha, standing with Alina trembling in her arms, realized with horror whoever picked it up first would control their fate. Would it be Hamza, fighting for love and freedom? Or Xian, clinging to his empire of control? The snowstorm swirled, covering the scene in white, as the answer drew closer with every second. The gun slid across the snow, coming to rest halfway between the two men. The knife lay nearby, its blade glinting faintly under the storm-gray sky. For one suspended moment, all that existed was the ragged sound of breath, the pounding of hearts, and the choice waiting in the snow. Hamza and Xian lunged at the same time, their bodies colliding, their hands grasping, clawing, desperate. The snow beneath them churned into mud and blood. Aisha clutched Alina tighter, her voice cracking. "Stop. Please, stop." But neither man heard her. This was no longer a fight of fists, it was a fight for destiny. Hamza's fingers brushed the cold grip of the pistol first, but Xian's strength was relentless. With a savage shove, Xian knocked him aside and snatched the gun into his hand. He rose, panting, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. The gun shook slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer fury running through his veins. Hamza staggered to his feet, blood streaming down his face. He raised his hands, but his eyes were steady. "If you're going to do it, do it. But know this, Zion, you'll never win. Even if I die, you've already lost her. Aisha's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel Alina's tiny hands digging into her coat, trembling. She wanted to shield her daughter from all of this, but she couldn't move. Zion's finger tightened on the trigger. His lips twisted into a snarl. Then die knowing you were nothing. The shot rang out. For a split second, time itself froze. Aisha screamed. Alina cried out. Hamza's body jerked. But then Zion staggered backward, his face a mask of shock. Blood bloomed across his shoulder where the bullet had torn through. His grip on the gun faltered. Hamza stared, stunned, realizing the shot hadn't hit him. The pistol clattered to the snow as Zion collapsed to his knees, clutching his wound, rage and disbelief burning in his eyes. You, he hissed, glaring at Aisha. You pushed my hand, you made me weak. But Aisha hadn't moved. Her hands still held Alina close. The truth was simple, in his blind fury, Zion's own recklessness had betrayed him. Hamza seized the moment. He kicked the gun away, sending it spinning into the drifts. Then he grabbed Zion by the collar, forcing him down into the snow. It's over, Hamza growled. His voice shook with both fury and exhaustion. Do you hear me, Zion? Over. Zion spat blood, his defiance unbroken. You think this ends with me lying in the snow? No. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy her. I'll take everything. Hamza's fist silenced him, sending him sprawling unconscious against the white ground. The storm howled around them, covering the scene as if trying to erase it. Aisha rushed forward, tears streaking her face. Hamza, are you hurt? He shook his head, though his body was battered and bruised. His only focus was her. I'm fine, he rasped, his voice hoarse. Are you and Alina? We're safe, she whispered, collapsing into his arms. Alina clung between them, sobbing, but slowly, she began to calm, sensing that, for the first time in a long time, the danger had passed. Hamza held them both, his body shaking not from fear but from the release of it all. But as the snow fell heavier, covering Zion's motionless form, an unspoken truth lingered in the air. He wasn't finished. Not yet. Men like Zion didn't disappear so easily. And though tonight Hamza had won, the war for freedom and for Aisha's soul was far from over. The forest clearing lay in silence after the gunshot, broken only by the whistle of the wind and the faint whimpering of Alina pressed against her mother's chest. Zion's body lay slumped in the snow, his shoulder bleeding, his face pale. Hamza's fist still trembled from the fight, but he refused to take his eyes off the man who had terrorized them for so long. Aisha clung to Hamza's arm, her own breath ragged. For the first time, she felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Zion had fallen, yes, but the shadows of his power stretched far beyond his body. Hamza, she whispered urgently, we can't stay here. If he wakes, if his men find us. Hamza nodded. You're right. But we can't leave him alive to come after you again. Aisha froze. What do you mean? Hamza's jaw tightened. He looked down at Zion, bleeding but still alive. If he gets up, Aisha, he'll never stop. He'll hunt us. He'll destroy you. Destroy her. Her eyes widened, horror mixing with truth. Hamza was right. But how could she allow her daughter to grow up knowing her father had been killed? Even if he was a monster? Before she could answer, the distant hum of engines broke through the storm. Headlights pierced the fog, cutting across the trees. Aisha's heart leapt into her throat. It's them. His men. Hamza's eyes darkened. He looked at Aisha, then at Alina. We have to move. Now. He scooped up Alina in his arms, his own body wincing from bruises, and pulled Aisha close. Together, they stumbled through the snow, away from the clearing. Behind them, the beams of light grew closer, sweeping across the woods like hunting eyes. The Malik family's men found Zion minutes later. They rushed to his side, hauling his limp body out of the snow. Blood stained their gloves, but relief flickered across their faces when they felt a pulse. "Sir! He's alive," one barked. "Get him in the car, now." Zion's eyes fluttered open, pain twisting his features. His lips formed a single word, venom dripping from every syllable. Hamza. The name was both a promise and a curse. By dawn, Hamza, Aisha, and Alina had found temporary shelter in a rundown guesthouse on the outskirts of Murree. The room was small, the heater barely working, but it was safe for now. Aisha sat on the edge of the bed, watching her daughter finally fall asleep, exhaustion pulling her into dreams. The sight of Alina's innocent face brought tears to her eyes. "Hamza," she whispered, turning to him. "How long can we run like this? He'll come for us. You know he will." Hamza sat across from her, his hands wrapped in bandages from the fight. His expression was grim but resolute. "Then we stop running," he said. He pulled a worn folder from his bag, laying it on the table between them. Inside were documents, photos, evidence, Zion's hidden crimes. "We take this to the police. To the courts. We expose him." Aisha's breath caught. "But Hamza, he has power. Connections. Money. Do you think the system will fight him for us?" Hamza's voice hardened. "If they don't, then I will." But even as he spoke, far away in a private clinic, Zion was waking. His shoulder was stitched, his face bandaged, but his spirit, his fury, was burning hotter than ever. He sat up in the hospital bed, ignoring the pain, his eyes blazing. "They think they can run from me," he growled. "They think they can humiliate me and live?" His loyal men bowed their heads, awaiting his command. Zion clenched his fists, his voice low but deadly. "Bring them back to me. Alive. I want Hamza broken. And I want Aisha to beg for forgiveness." The shadows of revenge had begun to move. Snow fell heavier that evening, muffling the world in silence. The small guesthouse where Aisha, Hamza, and little Alina had seemed almost like a prison now, its creaking wooden walls too thin, its weak lock too fragile, its shadows too deep. Aisha sat by the window, staring at the whiteness outside. Every moving branch looked like a man watching them. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps approaching. Hamza paced the room, his shoulders tense. He couldn't relax. The fight with Zion replayed in his head over and over, each punch, each scream, each drop of blood. But most of all, Zion's final look, the hatred burning in his eyes, kept clawing at his thoughts. "Hamza," Aisha's voice was soft but strained. "Do you think he'll stop?" Hamza turned sharply. "No. Men like him don't stop. Not until they destroy everything around them." Aisha's lips trembled. She glanced at Alina sleeping soundly, hugging her small teddy bear. "Then what do we do? We can't keep running. She deserves a normal life." Hamza walked closer, crouching before her. He reached for her trembling hands. "We fight smart, Aisha. He has power, yes. But he also has secrets. I've gathered enough evidence to tear him down. The question is, who can we trust?" The answer came sooner than expected. The guesthouse owner, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, knocked on their door carrying a tray of tea. "Beatty, I know you're scared," he said gently, glancing at Aisha. "I don't know who you're hiding from, but I've seen that fear before. And I know a man, a journalist. He's been fighting the Malik family for years. Maybe he can help you." Hamza's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why should we trust him?" The old man gave a sad smile. "Because he's already lost everything to them. His brother, his home. Now he only wants justice." Aisha's heart pounded. It sounded dangerous, but also like hope. For the first time, maybe they weren't alone. Meanwhile, deep in Zion's private estate, plans were already unfolding. Zion, the weak from his wounds, sat in his study, his face bandaged, his arm in a sling. Yet his voice carried venom and authority. "They're hiding like rats," he said, staring at a map spread across his desk. "But rats always leave tracks." His most loyal man, Imran, leaned forward. We've already traced them to Murray, sir. A guest house not far from the main road. Do you want us to bring them? Zion's lips curled into a smile, cruel and cold. No. Not yet. Let them think they're safe. Let them believe they've found an ally. And then, when they reach out for help, we'll close the trap. Back at the guest house, the next morning, Hamza and Aisha prepared to meet the journalist the old owner had mentioned. His name was Rashid, and he agreed to meet at a small cafe in the marketplace. Aisha wrapped Alina warmly and held her close, her heart pounding as they stepped outside. Every stranger's gaze felt dangerous. Every car engine sounded like a warning. The cafe was crowded, the air thick with the smell of chai and fresh parathas. In the corner sat a man in his 40s, with weary eyes but a sharp, determined face. He introduced himself with a nod. You're Aisha, and you're Hamza. I've heard whispers of your story. Zion Malik has enemies, and I am one of them. Hamza's guard remained high. If you're truly against him, then prove it. Why risk your life for us? Rashid leaned forward, his voice heavy with emotion. Because my brother was killed by his men. Because the law is too afraid to touch him. Because every night, I hear my mother cry for justice. You want to bring him down? So do I. But understand this, you'll never win by running. You'll win by exposing him. Aisha exchanged a glance with Hamza. It was a risk. But maybe, just maybe, it was their only way forward. That night, as they sat in Rashid's small office reviewing files and planning their next move, none of them realized that Imran, the man loyal to Zion, was watching from the shadows. He had followed them. He had heard everything. And by dawn, Zion Malik knew exactly where his enemies were hiding, and what they were planning. The trap was ready to spring. The night was restless. In Rashid's dimly lit office, papers were scattered across the table, evidence of Zion Malik's crimes. Hamza traced his finger over the documents, his jaw tight, while Aisha sat near the window, clutching Alina close. The storm outside raged as if the skies themselves anticipated the coming battle. This is enough, Rashid whispered, his voice low but determined. With this, the world will finally see who Zion really is. But Hamza shook his head. It won't be that easy. Men like him, they don't fall with papers. He'll strike before this ever reaches the courts. Aisha's eyes darted to the shadows in the room, her instincts restless. She felt it too, the storm wasn't just outside. It was closing in around them. And she was right. Across town, in a black SUV cutting through the icy roads, Zion sat with his arm in a sling, his face pale but his rage burning. Imran drove silently, his eyes sharp. They think they can expose me? Zion muttered, his voice hoarse but deadly. No. Tonight, it ends. Tonight, I take back what's mine. His fist clenched, reopening the wound on his knuckles, but he didn't care. Pain only fueled his thirst for revenge. Back at Rashid's office, the power suddenly flickered. The lights went out, plunging them into darkness. Alina whimpered, clutching her mother's shawl. Hamza instantly stood, his instincts screaming. They're here. Rashid grabbed a flashlight and whispered, there's a back door. Go. Now. But before they could move, glass shattered. Armed men stormed in, their faces covered, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. Zion entered last, his presence filling the room like poison. Well, he sneered, his eyes locking on Aisha. My runaway queen, did you really think you could escape me? Aisha held Alina tighter, her voice trembling but firm. You'll never touch us again, Zion. Never. Zion's gaze shifted to Hamza, venom dripping from his smile. And you. The poor boy who thought he could steal what belongs to me. I should have finished you the first time. The room exploded into chaos. Hamza lunged at the nearest man, knocking him to the ground. Rashid swung a chair, fighting with desperate fury. Aisha screamed for Hamza to be careful, shielding Alina behind her. Zion stood back, watching the fight unfold with twisted satisfaction. Kill him, he shouted. But bring her to me alive. Hamza fought like a man possessed, his fists and fury unstoppable, but there were too many of them. One struck him across the back with a rod, sending him crashing to the floor. Aisha cried out, rushing toward him, but Zion grabbed her by the arm, yanking her back. "You're mine, Aisha," he hissed. "No matter where you run, no matter who you hide with, you'll always be mine." But in that very moment, a shot rang out. Zion froze. Slowly, his eyes lowered to his chest where blood was spreading across his shirt. He staggered back, shock twisting his face. Rashid stood with a pistol in his trembling hands, his eyes blazing. "This is for my brother." Zion gasped, fury mixing with disbelief. "No. I can't lose." His body crumpled to the ground, lifeless. For the first time, silence filled the room. The surviving men dropped their weapons and fled into the storm, leaving behind their fallen master. Hamza pulled himself to his feet, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. Aisha rushed into his arms, sobbing, while Alina cried softly against her shoulder. "It's over," Hamza whispered, holding them close. "He can't hurt you anymore." Rashid lowered the gun, tears streaming down his face. Justice, finally. In the days that followed, Rashid published the evidence. The newspapers exploded with headlines, "Business tycoon Zion Malik exposed." The world learned of his crimes, his cruelty, his empire of lies. For Aisha, freedom finally arrived, but it came with scars that would take a lifetime to heal. She often sat in the quiet of her home, watching Alina play, and whispered prayers of gratitude that her daughter would grow up safe. Hamza stood by her side through it all, his love no longer just a dream but a reality carved through fire and sacrifice. And in the end, the story carried a lesson that echoed far beyond their lives: no matter how powerful evil seems, truth and courage will always rise against it.